Valentine's Day is coming up, so let's put together a thoughtful and creative gift to surprise someone special. To make this romantic themed tumbler and wooden ring box, we'll be using the WeCreat Vision 20-watt laser cutter and engraver. I'll put links to all of the design files and resources in the video description down below. Let's get started. Let's start with the ring box, and I'll begin by opening WeCreat Make It and setting my material to 3mm basswood. Then I'll import my vector files, and I'll select each of the outline paths and choose cut on the right hand side, and that will turn these into through cuts. Then I'll select the remaining paths that are intended to be engraved, and I'll be selecting fill engrave for those, and rather than use the preset, I'm going to set the power to 75% for those fill engraves. Now normally in the middle of the first heart on the far left, we would put text, for instance somebody's name, but in this case this particular ring box isn't actually being gifted to someone, so instead I'm going to import a picture of a heart and we're going to engrave that instead. I'm not going to spend too much time on this flat engrave process because I've gone into greater detail in a previous video. I'll link to that in the top right hand corner of the screen, so if you're looking for a more step-by-step guide on getting started with this machine, I would recommend that video. So now I'll use the Ctrl-A shortcut to select the entire design, move it to the top of the canvas, load in a 3mm sheet of birch ply, close the lid, and then back in the software when we press the refresh button, the onboard camera will give us a picture of our material. We'll select the whole design again and fit it in on top of this piece of material. If you want to do this exact project, you're going to have to resize this particular design to fit inside the tumbler of your choice. And so before importing these files into WeCreat Make It, one of the things that I did was I put them in Adobe Illustrator, or you could even use Inkscape, it's free, and I measured them and I made sure that they were going to fit inside the inner diameter of the tumbler that we'll use in the next part of this video. The WeCreat Vision made quick and easy work of that 3mm birch ply, and all of the cuts came out super clean. The engravings were quite nice too, although I probably could have upped the power on the engraving a little bit to make it slightly darker. This machine also has a nice automatically controlled air assist system, so you'll notice there's no scorch marks on these parts. The next step to making the ring box is to gather up all of these parts and group them into the components that we're going to glue together. On the left hand side, I've got these three parts that are going to make up the bottom or case of this ring box, and on the right hand side we've got the lid. I'm just going to be using regular wood glue to glue these pieces together. And just a tip on the inside of these parts, if you have any glue that gets pushed out or squeezed out, you could just use a Q-tip to clean that up. I'll carefully align all of these parts, and then I'll just use something heavy like this metal block to allow that glue to set and dry. Overall, I'd say this is looking pretty good so far, and now we're going to take care of the lid. And so I've got this small heart here that I'm going to pop into the bottom of the case, and this is going to help locate this ring when we go to glue it onto the top portion of the lid. So again, I'm going to carefully and lightly apply some wood glue here, and I really don't want this to get pushed out or squeezed out because I don't want the two halves of the case getting glued together. And so I'll go pretty light on the glue, and then I'll use that same metal bar to get the two pieces to set together. After some time, the two pieces will be bonded, and then we can pull those two halves apart and we can test fit our ring inside of the ring box. One thing to watch out for with this design is that if you have a thick ring, it may not close properly. To fix this, you may want to cut another one of these faces and then glue it right on top. That'll give you some added thickness and you won't have that gap. With the ring box done, I now want to focus on the rotary portion of this video, so let's take a look at what's included here with the WeCreat Vision rotary kit. The kit comes with a lot of useful accessories like this bubble level, some extra jaws, measuring tape, some holders for smaller things like rings, and some generic tools. The rotary module itself is nicely built and comes with these adjustable soft grip jaws, but the one issue with a lot of these chuck style rotary kits is that when you go to secure the cup in place, oftentimes it can be misaligned with the center axis of rotation. Obviously I'm exaggerating the angle of the cup a little bit here to make it clear what I'm talking about, but even minor misalignments can make that cup wobble, but luckily I do have a fix for this. And so using the included screwdriver, I'll remove those soft grip jaws, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to install a backstop. I've made these backstops available on my website, and they come in two different sizes. They're included in the same kit, and what I'll do is I'll choose the backstop that best fits the cup. On the WeCreat Vision, this isn't as critical as on some other machines. You probably could just go with the largest backstop, and you'll see why in a minute. But in general, on most machines, it'll be best practice to select the backstop that doesn't extend too far past the outer lip of your cup. Then we can reinstall the chuck jaws, and you can see here as I'm adjusting them, the backstop does not interfere with the movement of those jaws. And now when we install our cup, we can just bottom it out against the backstop, and it's going to be perfectly aligned with the center axis of rotation every time. There's no more guesswork, and it's quick and accurate. In the WeCreat Vision user manual, they suggest that if you have a longer tumbler or workpiece, you can secure it in place and then use the bubble level to check that it's not tilting. Now the problem with the bubble level is that it's square, and on a round surface, it tends to slip off and you're not really getting it perfectly aligned with the axis of rotation. To solve that, I've made this bubble level holder available on my website, and it actually comes as a kit with those two backstops. Now to make sure these long workpieces remain level and don't slip out of the chuck, you can use the included steady rest from the WeCreat Rotary kit. You can support the free end and then use your bubble level to make sure that it's level with your machine. Getting the Rotary kit installed is pretty straightforward. You're going to remove the two grills at the bottom of your WeCreat Vision, and on the left hand side of the machine, you're going to see two screws, and you're going to see a locating hole in the middle of those two screws. Remove the screws, and the Rotary tool fits directly on top. In the middle part, you'll have a pin in the Rotary tool that fits into the locating hole. Reuse the two screws to secure it in place. Make sure the machine is off, grab the connector and plug it into the port at the back. Now we can slip our workpiece over the jaws, and in this case, I'm going to try and grip this piece from the inside. Before engraving tumblers, what I like to do is clean them off with some isopropyl alcohol to make sure there's no skin oils left from handling them. You can hop back into WeCreat Make It software, click on the laser cylindrical button in the top right hand corner of the screen, and you'll notice your work environment rotate 90 degrees to line up with your cylindrical workpiece. Then over in the material section, I'm going to go ahead and find some stainless steel tumbler settings. Now they don't have red, so I'm going to go with black, and I think that should work for red. We'll find out. And then in the settings, I'm going to change my settings over to millimeters for the units because I've measured my cup in millimeters. So I'll type in the diameter of this mug, and the software will automatically calculate the perimeter. And the first thing you'll probably notice is this large red bar on top that says non-working area. And so this is a limitation of the WeCreat Vision. They clearly don't want the laser head moving too close to the rotating chuck, and that's probably to avoid any interference, and so we can't laser up there. Now I purposely selected this shorter tumbler for this demonstration because every other video I've seen on YouTube, they're using longer workpieces and flipping them around to avoid this problem altogether. But if you have a short workpiece, even if you flip it around, half of this mug would still be inaccessible. And so I'll address that in a minute, but one really cool feature this software has that may not have been obvious right from the start is that as you adjust the diameter, you can see the two bars on the side showing where the 180 degree marks are. And so when I reduce that diameter, it brings them in, and as I increase the diameter, it moves those 180 degree bars outwards. And this is amazing because if you wanted to do a full 360 degree wraparound engrave, now you have some reference points for where you're going to place that graphic and how far you're going to stretch it out horizontally. This has got to be one of my favorite features of this software, but in my case, I have a handle on the mug, so we're not going to use it. Instead, I'm going to be engraving this image of the word love, and it's just a raster image. So when I imported it, there was no inherent transparency, but if you right click on the graphic in the software, click on edit image, you can select colors to delete, and then you can end up with a transparent image. Removing the white background makes it easier to see the workpiece underneath and where you'll be placing that image. Now ideally I want it centered on my mug, but as I had mentioned, due to the limitation of the non-working area, this isn't possible. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the chuck jaws, and I'm going to reinstall them in the next position outwards, and that's going to give me enough adjustment to grip the outside of the cup. You'll also notice that by doing it this way, the cup has moved outwards, and so we're going to be less affected by that non-working area. And this is something I wanted to bring to the attention of beginner users because oftentimes there's not a one-size-fits-all solution to fixing your workpiece. Now back in the software, you can see I've squeaked out a little more room on my cup, and I can just get my graphic centered on the tumbler. The other thing I did was I moved the mug handle down just a little bit to be safe, so when it goes to rotate up during the engraving process, there's no chance of it hitting the laser head. And that's it, we should be ready to go, so I'll click the start button in the top right hand corner of the screen. And similar to flat engraving, the machine will autofocus on the top surface of the rotary piece. And I'll get these errors because a portion of the graphic that is transparent is in the non-working area, but that doesn't matter. As you can see in the preview, we've got the entire love graphic on our mug. And we can see that the estimated processing time for this job is just over 2 minutes. So we'll send that to the machine, press the button on the front of the WeCreat Vision, and the laser engraving process on this rotary piece begins. Once you get accustomed to the workflow, the WeCreat Vision is one of the easiest laser machines to work with. And we'll quickly process the other side of this mug with another different graphic. And so before I go and clean that one off, because you can see there's some residue there that needs to be cleaned, I'm going to rotate the mug around again with the handle pointed slightly down. I'll import my next graphic. This one does have some transparency in it. And you can see I've placed the new image beside the old one so I can get them roughly the same size. The material preset for the black stainless steel tumbler seemed to work just fine for this red one, so I'm not going to change any of the material settings on the right hand side. And that's it. That's how easy it is to set one of these things up if you're not listening to somebody explain the whole process step by step. So I'm just going to hit the start button. Again, part of my transparency is in the non-working area, so I'm going to get those errors. It's not going to matter for us. Press start and away we go. After a few short minutes, we end up with another beautiful result, and all that's left to do is remove the mug from the chuck and give it a good clean with some soap and water. Now we can put the whole thing together and make it look very presentable for that special someone. I'll wrap the ring box in some decorative red and white tissue paper, and I'll put that inside of the mug. I've also 3D printed a large heart to add to the overall presentation, but if you don't have a 3D printer, you could achieve a similar result by laser cutting one from wood. I hope you guys enjoyed this project. Be sure to check out WeCreat and their awesome Vision laser cutter and engraver, and check out my website embracemaking.com for a wide variety of laser cutter upgrades and accessories.